Okay, there we are. We're live. Sorry, I had to get all of these things working together. I hope this finds you all well. I wanted to give an update on the half marathon, and I completed it, and it was cold. But I wanted to speak today on how to build a positive slippery slope, and I will embrace the half marathon in my explanation. But I have some notes here, but I really wanted to share with you um, about a study called, well, it wasn't really a study, it's called the Milgram experiment. I do believe there is I don't remember if it's a documentary or some kind of uh, film about it. It was a study, and I'll explain it here about from Stanley Milgram back in the early 1960s. But anyway, this is how I first learned about the Milgram experiment. So it was conducted by a psychologist, Stanley Milgram, in the early 1960s. And it was a series of like social experiments that measured the willingness of study participants to either obey or disobey an authority figure who instructed them to perform acts that conflicted possibly with their personal conscience, right? So the experiment was initially conducted at Yale University and then was motivated by Milgram's desire to understand how seemingly ordinary people like you and I would be compelled to do inhumane acts, like, for example, the Holocaust that occurred during World War II. So in the experiment, participants were led to believe they were assisting in a study about memory and learning. Okay, so all of these the participants, everyone, so that they understood that this was real, and then they could understand kind of how this could be amplified, no incorrect response. So unbeknownst to the person who was quote unquote the teacher, they thought they were increasing real shocks to each incorrect response. So they started with the low and went to a higher number. So remember, they were slowly increasing the extent of the shocks. So as the shocks escalated, the learner, who was an actor, was an actual accomplice, or was part of the research team, would plead, and it's quite dramatic when you see someone doing this, to be released. Sometimes they would complain of heart trouble. Eventually, they fell silent, which by all means your mind can go to means that they either passed out or they might have died. So if the teacher hesitated to administer the shocks, the experimenter, again, who's considered the authority figure, would prod them to continue, right? Emphasizing really the necessity to complete the experiment. So the key finding here was that a significant majority of the participants, 65%, were willing to administer the highest level of shocks, despite hearing the learner's apparent suffering. They could hear them through the walls. And so really, from the standpoint of most people, when they look at this scientific experiment, it is people can be led down a path to obey authority figures, in the sense that if someone didn't have a strong moral compass, they might continue down the path and continue shocks and harming a human. But I think there's more to it. I really do not believe 65% of us will go to the point where we would be causing harm willingly to folks, because I would be curious to see if they redid the experiment and said, okay, what is the highest shock? And now would you just straight out shock this person with the highest shock available? Probably more would say no. But again, I don't know. But what I'd like you to think about is when you really look at this very interesting experiment, they use very small increments, but you can turn that around. And so with the small increments, let me go back. With the small increments down this way, it was considered negative, right? There was a slippery slope to causing harm and potential death to a participant. But what if we turned it around and used these small increments, right, into a positive slippery slope? Because if we can be done to do something against our conscience, against our values, against what we believe to be right and humane, well, why can't we utilize the same principles to do something that would be of value that we would find to our gain and to help others and ourselves. So I would consider that a positive slippery slope. So for example, in this experiment, they, like I said, they were done incremental stages. But with each wrong answer, it was increased. So the gradual escalation played a crucial, I think, in leading people down the slippery slope. Um, so, starting with minor actions that seemed acceptable made it easier for them to justify the more severe actions later. So each step was only slightly more severe than the last. So it kind of, I feel like, blurs the boundaries of ethical decision making. And as the shocks intensified, the participants became more desensitized to the consequences of their actions, and the authorities' prodding seemed to legitimize the escalation. Now, if you think about this as applied to a positive context, informing good habits, let's think about it this way. Um, For instance, someone's aiming to improve their fitness might start with a short walk each day. And then over time, these walks become longer or more involve into jogs, right? Eventually leading to a consistent exercise routine. Now, each small step is manageable and doesn't seem significantly different than the one they did the day before. But over time, these small changes really can accumulate into substantial lifestyle improvements. With the diet, you could start with just adding one vegetable to a meal every night, or eating one piece of fruit. So then you're also not taking away, so you're not feeling deprived, you're just adding something, but it's such a small amount. And we've all heard of these small positive steps, but I kind of wanted to frame it in this kind of slippery slope context, because if we could see how people could do this in a negative context, I would hope it would reinforce the ability for us to understand we can build a positive slippery slope in a much easier fashion. So it gives more strength to the argument that small steps, small increments can help you build a positive habit. Um, and just there are other ways you can build small and increasingly more difficult habits, because there's going to be obstacles in the way and all this stuff, but this is just for getting started. So in the context of how I did this with the half marathon, and I've been a runner for a long time, but there were many years in my life that I would transition up and down out of exercise, at least running on a regular basis. So during COVID, I didn't do races. I would run on occasion, but I was also building a business and very, very busy with patients. And then, of course, there was stress with all of us that we had. So, what I did when I moved here in preparation for this half marathon in November, well, first of all, I had tried to start running in May and before May, because I had a half marathon here, and did not train well and did not do as well as I wanted. I finished, but it was the slowest half marathon I'd had in my life. And so what I did all over again was I did a reset, and I started literally with running half a mile 3 times a week. I take the back, half a mile on 2 days a week, and then I would double it into only half a mile for Tuesday, Thursdays, and then on Saturdays I ran a mile. But it's more than double it. I'll get to that in a minute. Then the next week I would add another half mile. And what I would do is every single week I would add a half mile to that Tuesday, Thursday run. So the next week was 1 mile, 1 mile. But then on Saturday, what I did is I added a mile. So it wasn't doubling, because when I get to the third week, it'll be more than doubling. It would have been more than doubling. I just added a mile each week. Hope that makes sense. So I added half a mile to my weekday runs, and I added a mile for a longer run on Saturdays. So over the course of 10 weeks, I had gotten, once I hit 5 miles, because 5 miles during the weekday is something that I felt I could do and still maintain a good routine where I wouldn't harm myself physically, and also be a good base or foundation for the longer runs. And then what happened is I got to 10 weeks, I hit 10 miles. So I ran 10 miles, and I thought, wow, this was great, because it was, 3, 4 weeks prior to the race in November 12th, which I just ran the half marathon. And so that's how I did it. I literally created this slippery slope. So now when I run 5 miles, it has become so easy that I've never been in this place in my life. So if you do this positive slippery slope, it just becomes norm, right? These little nudges become normal. So you just create these opportunities to build this very healthy habit by doing very small incremental steps. So remember, if people can be nudged down a slippery slope to do very what we would consider evil and harmful things, it blows our mind. We can absolutely do the same thing in a positive direction. So I really wanted to highlight both of these, that it can happen in the negative and it can happen in the positive. So um, figure out what that is for you, and then do it very small but incrementally, and think about all the positive things that are going to come from, you know, consistency over time. You're going to see tremendous benefit. And so what happened on Saturday, I ended up cutting off 24 minutes off of my half marathon that I had done in May. Granted, again, that was my slowest one, so it wouldn't have to try too hard in my mind, but to cut that off was great. And I beat the time that I thought I would or wanted to from the outgo. And so now that was my foundation, and I'll see if I want to continue to push that and to get faster. Um, but again, I just really wanted to show you can do this positive slippery slope and frame it against how it can be done in a negative sense and positive. But I also wanted to highlight, as I'm thinking about this and just talking to you guys, talking to myself, talking to you guys, um, is when we think about all these things that we allow into our mind, we're thinking, oh, these little influences aren't going to have a big impact. Well, small influences that are positive can have a big impact over time, and so can the negative. So think about what you're consuming. What are the thoughts that you're having? What are you watching? What are you listening to? What type of conversations are you engaging in? All of those can have a positive or negative impact. They're lead down slippery slopes as well, right? So let's say you have a colleague that likes to gossip, and first it was just a little comment about the way someone is dressing, and then it gets deeper, and you didn't really say anything for the first time, and now they come to you because you listened the first time. So it's just these small little nudges down now what I consider a negative slippery slope, right? um, or that one little piece of candy. Now, granted, I'm not saying I might be going to extreme, but it can lead to bigger, less healthful choices. You start eating small bits of candy, right? So let's say that you see someone's candy jar, and so now you find yourself returning to the candy jar more than once during the day, at let's say at work, or um, you took your kids Halloween candy and you hid it away because you didn't want them consuming it all at once. But then you're like, you find yourself consuming the Halloween candy. I don't think if do not feel guilty about that. You're not the only one that's ever done this in their lifetime. But then again, we'll just think about all the positive things that you've done. Maybe you had a friend that asked you to go for a walk in the afternoon after lunch. And then you guys went for longer walks, and then you decided to get a larger group together. Or you decided, oh, let's create a hiking group, or hey, let's go hike together um, on a Saturday with our family. So lots of different things can lead to different ways, but I just want to show you, just we need to be more mindful of what we allow into our daily lives. Even these small little exposures and nudges and things really do make a difference, and they all matter. Um, I think there's so much to it that, you know, we need to do. But anyway, I have other thoughts here, but I will save that for another day. But I hope that makes sense. The summary of the Milgram experiment, I do not recall, but I think it was on Netflix. You can just Google, watch the Milgram experiment movie or something. I'm sure it'll show up. But the Milgram experiment and how that was such a negative context, but all you read about it is how inhumane humans can be led. But I think it's just the small incremental changes, and those small effects grab hold of us over time. That's just the way we're built as humans. So, yeah, I don't think those people necessarily would have done this out from the outright, but they were just nudged slowly down the slippery slope, you know? Yeah. You think about gambling, pornography, shopping online, or just shopping, alcohol, smoking, drugs, anything and everything. Just some food for thought. And yeah, love to hear where you feel like you could use the positive slippery slope in your lives. I think also this is where um, I can love to hear also where you feel like where do you think in today's world that we need to be more careful about what we allow our children to be consuming? Um, because these small nudges of them always like when they're bored or tired or can't sit still, we just shove a screen in front of their faces. I would love to know what you guys think about technology and how it can be a negative or a positive um, slippery slope. So anyway, lots of thoughts on all of this. Now I'm just rambling. So you guys have a great rest of your day, and I am off. I'll be running my continuous glucose mastermind group tonight. We have 2 more weeks in one of my groups. We'll be opening up a new group. So if you're on the waiting list, we will be sending out an email, and we should open it up on our website soon. The first class would be on the 12th. We meet twice a month, December 12th, that is. And then the second one, because of the holidays, December 19th. And then we'll have 2 in January and 2 in February. And I'm going to try to open up a few more, maybe another one up in December for start in January. And we'll do that till I get probably 4 or so going. But anyway, been using this amazing beta group, and that's been a lot of fun. Also, speaking about a slippery slope, using technology in a positive direction, how a CGM can be utilized to make better decisions or can make you so obsessed that you're not making good decisions at all. You're not even eating. So, that is another very interesting thing to discuss, the slippery slope of the CGM. Again, it's all in context. So, hope this helps. It was great talking to you all today, or to myself. I hope someone found this helpful. Again, thank you again for always spending time with me. I know you could be utilizing your precious time elsewhere. So I hope this was at least worth it for you. All right. Have a good day, everyone.